You're listening to an episode of the Skeptic Site podcast, seeking out the true, the beautiful, the good, wherever they can be found. I'm the host, Stephen Jones. Today's guest is Christina Crump. She's a life coach, a project manager, an all-around creative person, and relatively new friend of mine. In our conversation, I found what she had to offer to be fascinating, and I hope you do too. If you like Christina and want to connect, her website is christinacrump.com. Or you can find her on Instagram at christina.marie.crump. You can connect with me on Twitter at skeptical_monk.
I'm Christina. I am a project manager mostly. I also am a photographer and a life coach.
It sounds like you like freelance work.
Yes, I'm not a big fan of I'm doing air quotes here, working for the man, because I don't like feeling obligated and tied down.
Right.
There's so many things that brought me to who I am or how I came to be the person that I am. Toxic organized religion, really toxic upbringing with family and things like that. And then I started distancing myself from what felt gross and yucky over the past few years, and then that's just kind of led me to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but it seems, at least from the outside, that part of what's led you to where you are is not just having all that toxicity in your background, but trying to actively deal with it and move past it and
Yeah.
choosing to believe and live into other things.
Right, absolutely. That's the biggest thing. I used to say, I don't, this isn't true now. I've got a different perspective now, but I used to say I don't have role models. I have anti-role models.
Yeah.
And thinking back, I'm like, that's a little sad, but it was the truth then. So I knew what not to be or what I didn't want, and that sort of shaped things.
That's a conversation I try to have with my students all the time. When we talk about like what motivates people, we tend to focus on all of the positive motivators, right? Like
Right.
if you feel healthy and safe and secure, if you feel like people believe in you, you're more likely to take risks and live into your best self and blah, 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 right? Like what makes people thrive? Well, what makes a garden grow, right? Like set all the right conditions, etc. Except we're not just that. Like we're also motivated in defiance. Like
Yeah.
if people don't believe in us, we can rise up against that. And there are some really powerful, what you might call negative motivators. Not that they're bad, but we're responding in defiance.
Yeah, back to the garden metaphor. You need the stinky stuff to grow, fertilizer.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. All good gardens need a certain percentage of shit.
Yep, absolutely.
So, you and I talked quite a bit about generally what I'm trying to uncover through all these conversations, and you seem to grab onto it really quickly and just run with it. And
Yeah.
so I stopped trying to point toward what I'm after because you latched onto something so quickly, and I just wanted to run with whatever it was that you had settled on, right? Like I'm curious about that because I remember when we were talking about it, and you said, like very pensively, what do I believe? And
Yeah.
and the wheels started turning, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna follow that. So what was that like? That process of having to try to put down in words a few of those things.
Oh, it was strange. So when you first asked the question, it kind of it hit me. Oh my gosh, what do I believe? I don't know what I believe anymore because I went so like abruptly from like Christian, that's the way it's supposed to be, to I don't want to believe anything. I'm quote unquote agnostic. To I'm just not going to think about it. And then I read Holy Longings like last year and
Yeah.
it stirred up a little bit more, but I still wasn't really digging in. But then when you asked me that question, I was like, oh, what do I know to be true? And so I wrote like as new words kept coming up, I just write them down, write them down, write them down. And yeah, they feel really good to see those things and not in an organized religious like this is the way it should be sort of way, but in a oh, this is what I believe. This is what I know.
Yes.
Yeah. It was really neat.
And that is really what I'm so curious about. For a lot of different people, but especially those who have come out of really problematic religious backgrounds, it's not that we go to this place where we don't believe anything. It's that we definitely don't want to just embrace all the stuff that we were given.
Yeah.
But as we're working through all of that and letting go, we're divesting of so much stuff. What is it that we hold on to? What is it that we recenter on and believe in? It seems like most people do at some point. Like, I'm ready to start building something new. And that doesn't mean we necessarily like make a whole new creed for ourselves, but there are things that we start to believe in and operate our lives according to.
Right.
I'm excited to get into it. Do you have more to say about the process before you introduce me to your list?
I judged myself a lot in the process. That's
Hmm.
a strange thing, but in a "Ooh, is this right?" sort of way, and every time that came up, I was like, "Yeah, it's right, it's mine."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that was a thing, and it was really funny to kind of observe that in myself.
It's strange because I felt that a bit myself too when I started making my list. I mean, at first, I had to kind of give myself permission to go about this in a different way than I had before.
Right.
And then it was really empowering.
Right. Yes.
But I didn't get to the empowering part until I worked through like I I can do this, right?
Right. It's so strange, like, it's really cool, though. There are still parts of it that I'm like, "What is it? What specifically is that?"
Well, let me ask you this,
Mhm.
because we could approach this list in a lot of different ways, but what was the first thing you put down that you felt confident about?
The very first thing that came to mind when you asked that question after I was hit with that little brick wall thing was kindness. That is the very first thing is kindness. Yep. Like there's no doubt in my mind there's no doubt that kindness is good and true.
I love this because, like, when I was younger, like, if I asked the question, what do you believe is most true? And you said kindness, the younger me would have said, well, I mean, okay, that's good, but what does it even mean that kindness is true?
Right?
Now, I think I totally get it and I love it.
Yeah.
But can I go ahead and ask that question anyway? What does it mean to you to say that kindness is not just good, but kindness is true?
To me and from my perspective, nothing done in kindness is done from a point of in true kindness. It's not done from a manipulative perspective or an ego driven sort of thing. Now, don't get me wrong, there are people who appear kind who are in it for ego manipulation. However, the kindness that I'm feeling and thinking of is like heart and soul stuff, you know?
Like kindness as almost as a state of being, a way of being in the world, not just politeness or niceness.
And to the core, like, don't kill that bug. You know what I mean? That kind of kindness. Like, what? Why would you do that? And compassion goes along with that.
It sounds to me like what Gandhi means when he talks about nonviolence. He
Yeah,
doesn't talk about nonviolence as just abstaining from violence. Nonviolence is actually like a proactive, positive way of being in the world, where I not only am I holding back from doing harm, I don't wish harm, I don't desire harm. I want to engage in the world in such a way that I'm only empowering and encouraging and sharing
yes.
my life.
It's active and it's intentional and it takes work and
Yes.
practice.
Yes.
Yeah. And those things are also very important. Yes, yes, yes.
I like that because you know what's funny? When I was making my list, that was the first thing I put down
Nonviolence,
is that, yeah, truth and nonviolence are the same thing.
which, oh my gosh, those are amazing. Oh, I feel like the kindness and the nonviolence thing kind of hold hands. There's no
Yeah,
kind of.
they're right beside each other.
Yeah, they feel nice. Like they feel good.
Let me ask you this then. If that's like the first thing and you just, boom, landed right on it, where do you think that conviction for you came from? Where did you learn that? How did you come to center on that as something that you're so confident about?
So the very first thing that comes to mind is how I was raised, and it wasn't kindly.
Mm.
Um, and then as I got out of that, I started learning that the more I am kind, the better I feel.
Hmm.
And the more kindness I witness in others, the happier I am to be around them.
Hmm.
And like even with my kids and my husband, the more kindness I show, the better I feel, the happier I am. It's like lifeblood.
Yeah. I would not have related to this at all as a young person.
Mhm.
But now I put so much weight in, do these things work or not?
Right.
Right? When I see people lean into kindness and compassion and generosity and forgiveness, well, does that make people more fully alive or not? Does it strengthen their relationships or not? Does it make community more beautiful and stronger and more effective or not? Right?
Right.
Like, let's not even get into the question of, like, are these things true or not? Just look at whether they work or not. And
Right.
if they work, then that leads me to believe that they're true.
Absolutely.
If I go out into the world and believe it's not going to thunderstorm today and I act that way and it turns out that it doesn't work the way I wanted it to,
Instant disappointment.
yeah, that tells me that, like, perhaps I shouldn't trust that source of knowledge.
Right.
But if I'm living my life according to it and it totally jives with the world, then of course that's what true means, right?
Right.
I'm completely on board. These things lead us to thrive as individuals and as groups. So yes, of course they're true.
Yeah. And it's like the more you see of them and the more you're around them, the more they are in your life. And the more you expose other people, the more you influence them. And the same can go with like violence. You know, the more you're exposed to violence and the more other people are around violence, the more likely they are to be violent.
At least with kindness, there's the possibility of it working without harm being done.
Right.
But with
Absolutely.
violence, there's definitely harm being done, and then it may or may not pay off. Like, we could debate about whether it works,
Right.
but just the cost to payoff analysis right off the bat obviously favors kindness.
Yep. Absolutely.
Did anything excite you or surprise you?
Creativity surprised me when it first came to mind. That was the very next thing.
Really?
Yeah, creativity came next. And as I say that, I'm instantly like, well, of course it does, because if people can't be creative, they get stuck in complacency and boredom and just like in the same place always.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the fact that a lot of people see the word creativity or hear creativity and they instantly are thinking like art or music or, you know, the generic terms
Mm-hmm.
for creativity. But no, like my creativity, my idea of creativity is in all aspects of life.
Right. This is something I struggle with students who, by the time they're in my class, have already assigned themselves identities. I'm a creative person or I'm not a creative person. I'm good at math or I'm not good at math, etc. As if these are innate
Yeah,
abilities and not just what it means to be human.
right, absolutely. And everybody has creativity. And the more creative you can be, the more you're going to thrive. And it's also a muscle that needs worked out. It's practice and intention.
So, what does that look like for you?
You asked me that, and the very first thing I thought it was like everything, everything.
Well, because you happen to be a person who, I'm not even sure how accurate it would be to describe them with this, but there's sort of a lowercase c creativity, which is the thing that we all do.
Uh-huh.
And then there's sort of the capital C creativity where you're like, you have a particular kind of creativity where that's the thing that defines the kind of work you do. And we tend to lump into that art and music and theater and graphics design.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And you're a person who leans toward capital C creativity anyway. Am I
Right.
wrong about that?
No, that's absolutely right, but in a lot of different areas. Like jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing.
Okay.
And also in the like visual arts and critical thinking sort of creativity. So as a project manager, that's one of the reasons I'm good at that, because I creatively think and come up with new ideas and new ways to approach things and things like that. I'm thinking of all the different creativities and the kinds and the
It strikes me that most of the people who I've heard talk about how we're all creative and creativity is positive and an essential part of humanity, most of those people have been more capital C
yeah,
creative kinds of
that's
people.
a really good point. Is it the way that we're wired?
Yeah, maybe. Like, I wonder if it's just people who are naturally predisposed toward spirituality or spiritual practices will say, like, all people are spiritual. But part of the reason why they see that and understand that is because of the way they've been able to invest their lives into it, especially.
Yeah. So as you say that, I think of like a sort of unlocking.
Yeah.
It's there in everybody, but not everybody is aware of it
Hmm.
or as in tune with it.
And so then it becomes, for those who are really investing their lives into this kind of creativity, part of the desire then, if you're being kind and generous to the people around you, is helping them to discover
Yeah.
and unlock part of what's in them that could be more alive and could make their lives better.
Yes. Yeah, that's why I became a life coach.
Okay. Okay.
It's like it's that unlocking and it's that helping people to see what they have and see what's there for them, because not everybody's the same. We all tick a little bit differently. It's one of my favorite things to see somebody like see something new in themselves,
Yeah.
and it's an instant like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that was there, and they just take it and run with it, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things as well. I think that's why I became a social worker. I think it's why I became a teacher,
Oh, that makes total sense. Yeah.
because I'm looking for those moments with people.
And that's the next thing on my list, literally right under creativity, is observation and perspective.
Can you unpack those? Observation and perspective.
This is okay, this is one of the thing that I had written down where I'm like, I'm not even sure what I'm trying to see here or say here, but to me, it's seeing the good in people and in the world. The more good that I see in people and in the world around me, the better I feel. So it's kind of like a conditioning thing, but also the ability to take different perspectives other than your own. Keeping an open mind about it. Don't just focus on your own views.
It sounds like part of what you're describing, at least, just the one part of it, is like a kind of cognitive humility.
Yeah, yeah. Cognitive humility feels like absolutely true because it's not just you and it's not just about you and you're not the only person and it's not, yeah.
But it also seems like there's almost an element of hope in it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've seen enough good. I've sought out enough good in people and in the world around me that I trust it. And so even when I can't see it, I'm
Yeah.
believing that there's going to be good anyway.
Yes. Abso-freaking-lutely.
I struggle with this because I'm always of two minds. Part of me wants to embrace a lot of what I've learned through studying spirituality and through studying social work and a lot of your, for lack of a better phrase, self-helpy kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
or a lot of the wisdom that's come out of coaching, like you've studied, that where your attention goes, your energy follows. Or
Right.
if you are, if you're, whatever you're looking for in the world is what you'll find. And so if you're looking for truth and beauty and goodness, then you'll find it, etc. But then,
You have to see the bad too.
yeah, because the part of me that's dealt with trauma and the part of me that's dealt with oppression and wants to really listen to the voices of those who are disenfranchised or who are living
Right.
with oppression, etc., wants to say, so the problem is with me then? If I just choose to see the world differently, then these problems go away? No. So I always have trouble reconciling those well. And I
Yeah. It's almost like having to step inside and outside of yourself over and over again.
Huh. What do you mean by that?
I'm imagining, like, I literally pictured me like on a line. I'm on this side, everybody else is on this side. So, time to step out of my own box to see what everybody else is dealing with and feeling because it's not about me right now. And then when it's all too overwhelming or it's just like too much, all right, back into myself. What do I need? Okay, back out to everybody else. How can I help? You know what I mean?
I think I do.
And sometimes that's like a constant every like a couple times an hour you're skipping inside and outside of yourself like okay somebody else okay I can't do this right now. It feels crazy sometimes but it makes sense in my head.
I think I'm resonating with you. I want to make sure that I'm hearing what you're trying to say, but I
Yeah.
think I'm resonating with you. Is it like this dance of trying to hold yourself sacred, right? Listen to
Hmm.
your own needs and your own intuition and to be honest about those things while also trying to not be self focused?
Right, absolutely. I'm laughing at myself because like the Enneagram 7 in me is like yeah this is a fun way to think about it, we're skipping rope, it's good. That's my vision of it. Like it's balance because you do need to take care of yourself and you do need to hold your own space and make sure you're good.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you can't fully step outside and see what else is there, you know?
Yeah. It's almost like empowering the individual for the sake of everyone else.
Yes.
Part of empowering me as a person is that I am a person for the people around me also.
Right.
Like if I want to really embrace my humanity, then I have to embrace the humanity of the people around me. And so I can't just empower myself at the exclusion of others, but
Right.
I get empowered for the sake of others.
Yeah.
And that might mean necessary conflict if I'm up against people who aren't interested in empowering others.
Right.
Huh.
Yeah, see, this is where I'm like, yes, all of those things that you just said that I couldn't put into words. Absolutely that.
Well, I mean, that's supposed to be the thing that I do well, right?
Yeah.
Is try to clarify things.
Uh-huh.
That's one reason why I'm trying to do this podcast, right? Like, I am not particularly important or interesting, but if I can find other people with a voice like yours, and in conversation we can like really hone in on
Mm-hmm.
the beautiful things that you're trying to say, and amplify those, then awesome. Like, I feel like I've contributed.
You did. It works. I love this.
Give me a few years to figure out if I did the right thing. Someday I'll know if I could have stayed here.
The next word on my list is unity. And when you said necessary conflict, I was going to say and unity potentially as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like doing these things, like not only for yourself, but for other people also will lead to unity.
I should probably clarify that I have a very positive and conditioned intention when I say conflict, because I see conflict as a constructive thing that leads toward unity when you're handling it well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Conflict is supposed to build unity, not to divide.
Right.
If conflict is dividing you, that means you're not doing conflict well.
I was going to say you're doing it wrong. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Well, you and I are solving the world's problems right now.
Let's get our superhero costumes on and take it to the streets. That's hilarious. But yeah, unity is another one on my list because I truly believe and have seen power in numbers.
Tell me about seeing power in numbers.
Well, for instance, the things that are happening now, like the Black Lives Matter movement, the power in numbers with that, both the good and the bad quotes. That's just one immediate example that came to mind. And then for instance, community in general, like I know that when me and my little community of people are together, it's really beautiful and it's really powerful and things move. Whether internally or externally, things move, you know?
Yeah.
So unity and connection, I think connection goes with that, is also something that I believe to be true and good.
And it sounds like that might be a thing that you've embraced in contrast to your earlier experiences in life also.
Oh my gosh, yes. Because the opposite, in my mind right now, the opposite of that is solitude. And before, I had this mindset of, I don't need anybody else. I'm strong. I can do this on my own. I don't need people. You know what I mean? And now I'm like, who the hell were you and why were you that way? People are amazing.
Yeah, by and large, it seems like people really are. Because of the context we're in, where there's a real groundswell happening regarding the dignity of all Black lives and demanding that we address a lot of the systemic issues surrounding that. It seems like an awful lot of people are getting a crash course in systemic racism. We're having to learn about it and talk about it more now than we've had to in a long time. And it smashed a couple ideas together for me that I've been trying to think through.
Yeah.
One of those is, I, like, as a person who grew up in extreme poverty and in the midst of some serious mental illness, and I had a lot of trauma growing up, I have always gravitated toward the voices of the oppressed. Not because their story is my story, but because the part of me that had suffered resonates with the part of them that has suffered. And listening to their stories helped me understand my own. It informed me about who I am. And most of my life, because of my experiences, I've been pretty mistrustful of most people. It's one of the things that's led me to being such a solitary, introverted person.
Right.
I'm very slow to trust people, to connect with people, very slow to build relationships because I know what people are capable of.
Right. Yep, I get that.
And a lot of my growth in the last few years has really been embracing this idea that all people really are doing their best, whether it looks like it or not. People really are doing their best.
Right.
And people genuinely want good for everyone, not just their own. Most people, we have a lot of, let's say, misinformation and conflicted motivation when it comes to those things, but we want the good. And most people in most situations are just going to treat you well because you're another person. So here I am, like learning that and embracing that and finding it to be true in my experience, and then also having to reckon with the fact that I'm a straight white male.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
A lot of people genuinely don't have that experience of being able to trust that they're going to be treated well. In fact, I recently watched a video of Black parents telling their children, listen, because of the color of your skin, people are going to assume bad of you.
Yeah.
And you can't just assume that people are going to treat you well. And it's breaking the parents' hearts to tell them this because they want to protect their children's innocence. But the reality is they need to know that this is going to happen. And
Yeah.
they're so upset that conversation has to happen at all.
Yep.
But it's better for them to tell their kids rather than hear it from, say, the first time from a friend who says white people can't be trusted.
Oh gosh.
You know, they're saying that that's not what they want their children to learn either. And so I want to hold on to both.
Right. Absolutely.
Most people are good. And some people are absolutely justified in not trusting people at first.
Right.
And so, how do I recommend that people be more open and willing to trust people?
Right.
Because of course,
As a straight white man.
yeah, of course, I'm mostly going to get positive responses.
Right. It's so hard. Like it really is. And then I go looking at my list, I'm like, well, how unity, what?
Well, and I
Yeah.
think that's one thing that we've talked a lot about in recent years is unity is a beautiful goal. And I haven't heard, when I'm listening well, I haven't heard overall the Black Lives Matter movement not be interested in unity. The message isn't
Right.
disunity. The message is we can't be unified as long as you're treating us this way.
Right.
No peace without justice.
Yep.
I'm all on board for that. That I get, because that helps me reconcile. I still believe in unity, and also unity can't just be on my terms.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so true.
Real unity is always interested in the good of the other.
Yes. I'm clapping. Yes.
I'm not preaching here. I'm thinking out loud, trying to make sense out of this. You know?
It's true though. Like it's so freaking true. It's not just for your own benefit. It's not unity for the sake of making you feel better. It's not unity for the sake of stroking your ego. It's unity for the sake of humanity.
It's not a call for unity that wants the problems to just go away. It's a call for
Right.
unity that says, if we really want unity, then we're going to deal with the things that are dividing us.
Yeah, and that's the kind of unity that's going to change the world. So that's the unity that I believe in, that I know to be true and good.
I like it.
Yep.
It's been a long time since I came across this. I wish I could give credit here. There are people who have suffered, and then their response to others who are suffering is, I know what it's like to suffer. I don't want anyone else to have to suffer. Or there are people who have suffered, and then their response to other people who are suffering is,
Ugh.
I had to suffer too. Everyone should have to suffer.
Yeah.
That distinction resonated so deeply with me because we often couch this discussion in people who have suffered or people who haven't suffered enough.
Right.
But I don't think that's the case. Like, suffering is a fundamental part of what it means to be human.
Right.
Like, if you care at all, suffering is part of your experience.
Absolutely.
The difference is, does that mean that we respond in a hardened and callous way to the reality of suffering in the world?
No.
Or do we respond in a human way?
Yep.
Because in order for me to be human, the part of me that suffers has to hear the suffering of others. And I don't like that. I would.
It goes back to the shit in the garden.
Yeah.
Absolutely it does. It doesn't feel good, but it's needed and necessary.
Yeah.
Which is a hard truth that I've had to learn this past couple of years. I'm like, yeah, the stuff that doesn't feel good is absolutely necessary. And you're going to have to look at it and do what you can to get through it.
That's a central thing for a lot of us. But according to the Enneagram, that's one of the central tasks for a 7, right?
Yeah, we run away from pain. Absolutely. It's like, we don't want pain. Look at this happy thing instead. Look at the butterflies and the rainbows and the beautiful, beautiful things. No, we have to embrace the bad too.
Yeah. I offer that up as a 5 who, if I'm not doing really, really well, that's my pattern as well.
Mm-hmm.
In times of stress or unhealth or whatever, I respond just like a 7. I want to ignore it and I want to make the pain go away, at least for a little while. But it's easy for me to get stuck there too. And and then my life kind of goes on hold. The problems don't go away. I've just successfully insulated myself against them until the walls eventually cave in and I have to deal with it and deal with the pain. And then life gets better after that.
Right. And I was just sitting here relating to that too, because I'm like, when I'm in health, I lean into like the 5 energy where I'm researching and I'm learning and I'm digging in and I'm like gathering resources and learning what I can do to be in the moment and be in what feels painful, but I know to be right now, So I totally get it.
When 5s and 7s have a good rapport, which, I've had really great life-giving relationships with a lot of 5s and 7s in my life. 5s, because, 5s know what it's like to be a 5, and there's a real safety there. But also with 7s, there really is this dynamic of 5s helping to ground 7s and 7s helping 5s to cheer the fuck up and live a little bit.
Right, exactly. My husband's a 5 and we have a really fun relationship because of those two things. Like, he's very the grounding and like, okay, but also think about this before you get super impatient and make this big decision.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah, when I was married, my wife was a 7. We didn't have this language then that might have been helpful to us, but we did recognize this dynamic of her having a real leavening effect on me and me having a stabilizing effect on her. And when that worked, it was brilliant.
It's amazing.
When it didn't work, her tendency to ignore the bad and my tendency to go along with that because it was convenient.
And then you wanted to be in your head.
Yeah.
Yep.
We would both numb and ignore, and that led to the problems not being addressed, and so we're not married anymore.
Explosion.
Yeah. So so it goes. Luckily, we were able to switch, like, once we weren't forced to live in each other's space and all of that, we were able to reestablish a really healthy friendship where that original dynamic actually works again some, which is nice.
Good.
So hooray for reconciliation on the other side.
Yeah. Hooray for knowing the Enneagram too.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's a useful tool,
It really, really is.
That's what I tell people. Like, I don't need to defend a lot of what's said about it or how it gets touted as some profound spiritual insight into the nature of the universe. Like, there's a part of me that wants to find those things.
Right.
But I just tell people it's a useful tool.
Yeah. It's great in like self-discovery and self-awareness and also understanding. So it's so wonderful. All of the things do require you to be intentional. Like, while some of it feels like it comes naturally, you also have to work at it and you have to be mindful of it.
I like intentionality being included.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to believe in good,
Right.
but it has to be chosen. Otherwise, like,
Yes.
if we operate on our default settings, our results are going to be mixed at best. Our contribution to the world around us is going to be mixed at best.
Right.
And honestly, our health is going to be mixed at best.
Right. So good.
Unless we choose otherwise, we're operating with all of our old baggage, with our limited perspectives. Like, we have all these limiting factors that we inherit to some degree or build up in defense against a dangerous and risky world, or we have that choice to try to move beyond those things.
Right.
And if we don't choose to move beyond those things, how are we ever going to deal with the issues that keep us disunited? How are we ever going to be open to the good that we don't see yet? You know, a lot of these things you've said, it seems like intentionality and helping people discover what obstacles are in their way, what's got them stuck, that's preventing them from choosing the better.
Right.
Like, what's stopping them from being intentionally better?
Right. Right.
Because I think if it's not for all the obstacles in the way, I think people will choose better.
Absolutely. And then it gets to a point of like, how do you break through those obstacles and make a plan? And you have to be intentional.
And that's why you're a coach.
Yep. That's exactly why I'm a coach. Absolutely. And it's like the most life-giving thing. It's so good.
It might be a few years before I know if I spent my time right. I try so hard so I won't miss out.
You said you recently read, it was a Roar book, right?
Yeah, The Holy Longing.
The Holy Longing. Also, in conversations that we've been a part of with some other friends, I know that you've reapproached some religious conversations in a way that you've mostly avoided for years.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean everything that a lot of people might want it to mean, but I'm curious about what it does mean for you. And particularly, this is my wonder. All of these things that you are convinced are true, how do those things affect you reapproaching this conversation?
That's a really good question. So I stepped out of any sort of religion or any of that for a long time. And yes, I'm stepping back into exploring it to see what it means for me now.
Which is different than stepping back into organized institutional religion.
Right. I don't want that because all that I know of that is yucky. So what it means for me now is looking at all of these things that I know and I feel to be true and good, and how would that look like in a God?
Beautiful.
Right? And so I'm like, and that's what it to me it should. I hate the word should lately, but that's how it should feel. Like, it should feel good.
Yeah.
And it should feel peaceful and grounding and just like a warm energy. So that's the perspective I'm taking on this new exploration of like, okay, what does my spirituality mean? What does it look like to me? And all of these things that I find true and good, that's what a God should be.
Yes. One of the most important shifts for me, I've never officially stepped outside of my own religious tradition, but also I've never felt all that comfortable within it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely like a borderline kind of figure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in conversations on both sides.
Right.
But in reconciling with my own tradition, one of the convictions I came to, and one of the struggles I continue to have with it, is how is it that we can continue to imagine God as less good and less beautiful and less moral than we expect ourselves to be?
Right. And then I get all these questions within myself, like what kind of God would send a human to hell or a soul to hell for loving somebody that's not right? Or like what kind of God? It's just I have all of these questions. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Luckily for me, because I've spent so much time studying the breadth and depth of my own religious tradition, I get to, at least for myself, resist a lot of the pressure around us, where, we're surrounded by conservative and ultra conservative Christians who
Right.
have this limited perspective on what their tradition means. That
Oh my gosh, yes.
the notion of a punishing God and of the suffering of God being something we are to blame for.
Yeah.
They see this as being so central and fundamental to our tradition.
Right.
And I get to know that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
One of the threads in Christianity has been this universalist, all reconciling God, where the suffering of God is an expression of unity with us, of solidarity with us in our suffering, and that the redemption of all things is a reasonable expectation based on the character of God. That God is not petty like we are. And so I get to know that that's part of my tradition, and that helps me, I guess, feel safe somewhat, or
Right.
make some peace in my own tradition, even while I'm surrounded by a whole bunch of people who don't understand that or get it.
Right.
So when people have trouble with my religious tradition, I feel like, well, yeah, you do. Look at it. Also, I don't feel like that's representative of the best of us.
Yeah, there gets to be so many questions of like, how can you believe in God, but like you...
Yeah. How can you believe in God and also believe in violence?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're surrounded by that,
Mm-hmm.
Blows my mind.
It's sad. And then that's what brings me to question everything.
Yes.
Like, why would I feel sad about that?
It brings me to one of the things that I wrote down on my list, one of my convictions, which is something I mentioned in the little introductory episode thing that I've recorded but still have not uploaded anywhere yet. I need to do that. Which is that ideas matter, like the things we believe matter. Because
Absolutely.
if you believe true and beautiful and good things, it leads you to act in true and beautiful and good ways, and makes you a true and beautiful and good person.
Yes. Oh, that's so true. Because
when people have these really ugly images of who God is, and then look at what they support in the world. Of course, they're complacent about injustice. Of course, they support violence in response to the other. Of course, they support all of these things.
Yeah.
Because the image of God they have reflects some of the worst in us rather than some of the best in us.
Oh, that's so sad. So true.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I have no idea who or what God is. But if God, then God's not petty like us, and God is not foolish like us, and God is not impatient like us, and God is not violent like us.
That's where I'm at. Just be a good human.
Given where you're at with agnostic / exploring what is your spirituality / exploring these things I believe, what do those things look like in a God, etc. Given the whole like mysterious conversation, who has God been for you lately?
Oh my gosh. I'm such a 7. Okay. Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, okay.
Bob Ross. Like what we know of these people.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting somebody completely. Like,
Other PBS figures?
no, there's somebody else. Who is the other person? Like, I feel a face. Does that make sense? Like, I'm sensing that there's somebody else that I need to say.
Okay.
Basically, those are two people that I'm like, oh my gosh, my heart, it's so happy. Especially Mr. Rogers. But, oh, and like Mary Poppins.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
Anyway, it's fun and it's playful and it's also like directional and guiding and good.
All of the examples that you've mentioned illustrate one thing really well that I feel like a lot of people have a hard time getting, which is that gentleness is not weakness. There can be tremendous strength in gentleness.
Right. Absolutely. And the most gentle people you know can be the most courageous.
In a dangerous world, it takes tremendous strength to remain gentle.
Right. Absolutely. I feel like that those people and those ideas give a really good idea of like, my God, it just feels good and it feels wholesome and it feels sturdy and like safe.
I like the word wholesome. That's not a word I used for a long time.
Really?
But I've recently begun hearing it from other people, and I like it because you know what it does? It captures very succinctly the ways in which the religion I grew up with missed goodness.
Yeah.
What they got wrong about goodness. So caught up in certain things that they missed that wholesomeness is it's so related to innocence.
Yeah.
Whereas innocence can be naive. The whole idea of wholesomeness is like a grown-up, mature innocence.
Yes.
I'm not ignorant of the hardness in the world, but I'm also refusing to let it be the thing that's most true in my life.
Right. Yep.
Wholesome. I would love to continue exploring this idea of wholesomeness as a primary characteristic of God.
Right?
What if we just say God is wholesome and then let everything spread out from there? What do we get?
Yes.
Beautiful.
I feel like this wholesome umbrella. I'm imagining an actual umbrella and this all this. Yeah.
I love it. I would love to keep kicking this idea around with you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we'll have to do that.
Yep, I'm game. I want to paint it.
Do it.
I think I'm going to. I have a good visual.
Well, I'm really excited. This conversation was everything I hoped it could be. And so I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me.
It was really fun. I knew that I would be like, oh yes, let's do this. As soon as you started like talking to me about it, I'm like, this is good stuff.
I had a hunch we would jive pretty well, but yeah, this was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maybe by then I won't be hurrying around, scattering seeds of hope. Maybe I'll be a bit more secure, remembering that I don't always have to say the right